The NBA season is heating up, and there's never been a better time to get in on the action. Whether you're looking to hammer a Pascal Siakam player prop or ride the money line with LeBron James and the Lakers, our partners at Sign Up Expert want to make sure you're ready to sweat your bets. With one of the best, Sign Up Experts is hooking up our listeners with one of the newest sports books available in Canada, Betano. Betano is home to some of the best odds when it comes to betting on the NHL and offers unique markets including virtual soccer and basketball. All you have to do to get started is scan that QR code on your screen or click the link in the description to register and place that first bet. Now, if you thought Damian Lillard being traded to the Bucks has been the best surprise of the season so far, wait until you try Betano. Don't walk. Run to check out Betano today. Scan that QR code or hit the link in the description to get started and start sweating your bets with the best. Always remember to bet responsibly and within your means. Viewers must be 19 plus to sign up for Betano. This is Nailing the Apex. I'm Tim Hauraney, joined today by Jesse Blake. Jesse, man, thanks very much for taking the time to do this. How are you?
Oh, no problem. I'm just stuck here in simple old Toronto, Ontario, Canada, while you get to gallivant all over Las Vegas.
Yeah. It's been something.
I can imagine.
Oh, buddy. The longest I've ever been in Las Vegas is probably 3 days. And so I've been here for, I want to say 8 or 9 days so far. And that's probably 5 days too many.
Yeah.
And so I'm exhausted. I know I'm not complaining, but
no.
It's just that like Vegas is awesome. It's a ton of fun, but it's a lot. Like it's a lot of stimulus.
Yeah. If anybody's been to Vegas, they know exactly what you mean. Because I've only been one time, and it was for a 3-day trip. And by the end of the 3 days, that was it. That's all I needed. And we actually got stuck there for a 4th day because our COVID results, so this was in 2021, our COVID results didn't come back in time, so we couldn't get on a plane. So we had to stay an extra day in Vegas. And that extra 4th day was like, it was a little much. I didn't need that extra day because it's so Vegas all the time.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
I was kind of like saying to myself, look, don't let the dog off the leash just yet when you get there. Ease into it like an old man into a bathtub. And by day 3, that was all thrown out the window.
Oh, yeah.
So it was over.
You went too hard.
It was over, and I lost.
Oh, God.
And I lost a lot of money.
Well, that's what it's there for. That's why Vegas is there, to take your money.
Yeah, that's essentially what has happened. Whatever, it's been a good experience. So it's the opening ceremony we had yesterday on Wednesday, probably one of the most extra events I've ever been a part of, been to, covered. There was a lot going on in this thing, Jesse, and I'm not sure if you had a chance to watch it yet, or if you got to watch it live or pre-recorded or whatever. And what did you think?
So I didn't watch it live, and initially I was looking online on Instagram and Twitter and some of the comments, and there were some people being like, "Oh, it's so cheesy and so extra." And then so this morning I watched it all back, and it's only 30 minutes. Like they have the full thing posted on the F1 YouTube channel. I watched it. It was 30 minutes, and it's just a series of performances. They invited everybody that they could get from country to DJs, artists to Latin American artists, just everybody they could find and who would perform for like 2 minutes. They would cycle through them. And then the drivers came out for about 30 seconds each on their pillars. It looked like the Hunger Games set up when they were out there waving to the crowd. But I didn't mind it. It was a musical performance just for a bunch of acts that lasted 30 minutes. And like the fireworks were spectacular, and it was really overdone. But I definitely didn't mind it. I thought it was very extra, but it fit the vibe of the whole week. What did you think about it being there live in person?
I have a lot of thoughts on it because, when I first got here and then I saw the compound where everything was taking place, and they'd done such a tremendous job just to get the pit building put up and built and ready to go. I was just thinking to myself, like, the lengths that they have gone to just to build this, and now they want to put on this massive opening ceremony. And I had a look at some of the details of what it was going to entail or be like days leading into it. And I thought, this is a very ambitious project. I thought I would be surprised if this thing goes off without, it being a bit of a disaster. And then it started going. So we got special access to sit on top of the pit building. So we got to go right up on top. And then we had allowances to basically go into the VIP paddock area, the VIP pit building. So their hospitality area, mingle with a lot of the guests that are in there. And there was hundreds and hundreds of guests in these hospitality zones. And they're very lavish, very luxury. They've done a really great job of putting that together because they know who their clientele is, who's coming in. And it was pretty fantastic. And then the show got started, and I was like, they roll out these cube trucks. So I seen the cube trucks in the afternoon because I had to go over so early. And I thought, these things look a little ridiculous. How is this even going to work? And then once everything lit up, then I was like, oh my God, that is incredible. It just kind of blasted your face with overstimulation, and there was so much going on, Jesse.
I thought they were so cool, those those trucks.
Man, the amount of stuff that was all going on at once. You had whatever, Steve Aoki performing a set, then Tiesto came after him, and while that's all going on, you had a drone show that is taken off in the sky. And it's in the shape of this F1 car, and it's rotating and moving. And I'm just it was one of the most incredible things I've ever seen. To be there and to witness all of it, because I had no idea what was happening. There was just so much going on. I thought it was tremendous. I mean, it's way too much. It's way over the top, but it is Vegas.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if people were expecting
That's what it felt like to me.
The classiness of the Olympic opening ceremony, where it's they're all parading out each one, and there's symphony music playing and all this stuff. But no, they did it in their way. Usually you don't have opening ceremonies like this for an F1 race, but they decided to hold this thing, and if they're going to hold it, it's going to be over the top. There's going to be the drone show, and I thought it fit. And hearing your perspective of being there and how spectacular it must have been to witness that just go off in person, I think that's pretty cool that F1 was able to pull that off, even though it sounds like a lot of the drivers weren't a fan of it.
No, not at all. I mean, a lot of the drivers, especially Verstappen, following all of it, he had said that it was, this weekend was kind of 99% show and 1% sporting event. And, he's not wrong, right? I see what he's saying for sure. Then Carlos Sainz and Lando Norris, Lance, got to hear from all of them, speak to all of them. And, lots of them just weren't that big of fans of doing, something that big. And I think a lot of them just didn't want to feel like they were too Hollywood or too much showbiz because they wanted to be recognized as athletes.
Right.
And I got that sense from them.
Yeah. But to Verstappen, who's it's 99% show, what's wrong with that sometimes? What's if it garners more interest in your sport and it gets people interested in F1 or watching these special, even if you are a fan, but then you're going beyond and not just watching the races, watching all this extra content. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with garnering more interest in your sport? I feel like that's how you grow. The whole reason F1 is having this boom is because they were willing to do Drive to Survive and grow the sport in these kind of untraditional ways. So I don't know. I feel like they need to embrace this on some level because it's good for them and good for their business.
Yeah, you make a good point. Fernando Alonso said something similar to that effect during his press conference yesterday on Wednesday. And he kind of put it down to the fact that you're in Las Vegas, and so you have to kind of embrace the place that you are in and how big of a show this is, and then just how much Liberty Media and Formula One have put in to doing this event here. And I think on the one point, I agree with what you were saying, Jesse, and I agree with what Fernando is saying. I also agree a bit with the other drivers too, in the fact that, I don't think they want to be like showboated or, paraded around. They just want to go and race. That's why they're there. They're there to just drive race cars, and that's all they want to do. And look, I get it, but at the end of the day, I mean, you kind of got to do this extra stuff too,
Yeah. I feel like it comes with the gig, like the only reason you get to drive is because people are invested in your driving, and there's advertising dollars behind it, and people want to watch the race and all that and sell tickets. So I don't know. It goes hand in hand. There's a delicate balance where it can't be too much showmanship, but you also have to embrace it on some level because you are in Vegas.
Yeah. And that, I think, you're definitely right on that. And I think at the same time, you ever notice like Formula One goes to all these different countries, and then for every single country they go to, every race organizer has their own spin on how they want the show to go. Every country embraces Formula One differently, and they put their own unique spin on things. I mean, say something similar with Miami. Like you remember the driver introductions, even though that was a little too much, and I don't think the drivers really liked it or really enjoyed it all that much. And then you go to Texas, and it's a little bit different. You come to Canada, and again, it's a different type of atmosphere. It's a different type of event. And with this one, it's just, I get it that it's their first time here and they want to make it a big thing, but they really went out of their way to make it a big thing. And it went off quite well without a hitch, really. I think the next big question moving forward is going to be the racetrack and what happens tonight for free practice sessions. Cause I was out on the track yesterday, and I don't know, this could be a tough one to drive on, I think.
Yeah, I find it so interesting the way they've done it. With one, the track is going to be open. It's open throughout the day and throughout the weekend, which is just wild to me. That just if you're a regular person driving a car in Vegas, in between the practices and the races and the qualifying, it's open to just drive on, and then they close it back up and it's a racetrack again. Like, how does that even work? And that blows my mind.
Yeah, so essentially right now, as we're taping this, it's 1 p.m. local time, so Pacific time. My hotel room is right over top of the Las Vegas Strip. I'm right across from the Bellagio, and so I can see down, and I can see the entire Vegas Strip and everything that's going on. They got cars driving up and down that thing right now, and I can tell you that they're going to close it at 5 p.m., and then they're going to reopen it to the public at 4 a.m.
Oh, wow.
And the issue with all of that is that you're now going to get that local traffic that you spoke of zipping around parts of the race course. And you're not going to have support series out there driving around, which they should have. I mean, all they're getting is Formula One here, and then that's it. And so I think, like, a lot of the drivers were concerned at the level of grip, and it is going to be quite limited. And it feels like it's going to be, I don't know if you remember Turkey 2020, but that track, they'd resurfaced it. There hadn't been a lot of running on it, and it was like an ice rink, and it was cold. And it kind of feels like we're leaning towards those conditions. And I think for this particular race, I think they need those support series to help rubber the track in and create more grip. But it'll be interesting to see how tonight goes for practice and then into qualifying. I think the drivers are concerned about that for sure. And then obviously just getting the confidence. Like around here, you're coming down to the Las Vegas Strip here, Jesse.
Yeah, it's a brand new track for everybody, right?
Yeah. I think like the braking zones are going to be really interesting for the drivers to kind of get the confidence to push the braking zones because they're coming off the strip at whatever it's going to be 350 kph, and they got to push that braking zone further and further and further. And it's like if you push that just a little bit too far, and that's when things happen. You go off the track, and they got lots of runoff here, which is great. But at the same time, for the driver, you don't have a sense of what this track is capable of. So you're always learning, and they're gonna be learning as this whole weekend evolves. Even into the race, they're gonna be learning things about the track. So lots to learn in a short amount of time. No support series here. Could be really cold. It was hot. It was humid last night. It rained last night, the first time
really?
in like forever.
Yeah, that's very shocking.
In like a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the comments about it being cold. A couple what was it, last week? We got the comment from the F1 bosses how they didn't know it would be cold at this time of the year in Las Vegas. Are the temperatures going to get chilly tonight and tomorrow for the race, making the conditions possibly even worse for the drivers?
They might. I think one of the there have been a couple days that I've been here. I've been here for a bit, like I had mentioned off the top, but there were a few days that were actually really cold, like Canada cold. Like we're talking, 5-6 degrees, and that's including like the wind chill. But last night was particularly warm, and that was interesting because I was outside from 4 p.m. all the way up to 2:30 in the morning. Zipping back and forth from the media center to the paddock and whatever. So never really was inside. And it was actually quite humid. And I think for tonight, for the practice session, it's supposed to be a bit chilly, but it's supposed to get colder as the weekend moves along. And I think that's where these issues are going to start creeping in with drivers not being able to get enough temperature in the tire. And if they can't get enough temperature in the tire, then there's going to be a high level of graining, and then that's going to really affect the racing a lot. I think it's not the most sexiest of tracks, Jesse.
Yeah.
It's not going to be the most it's not going to be one of the a legendary track.
Yeah.
But I think it could be good for racing, for passing, and for getting stuff done.
Mm-hmm. I've one question about the actual track, because you're saying it's not going to be sexy. The strip, the longest straightaway I've ever seen in F1 is in F1 history. It's crazy how long that straight is. How is that going to work in the race? Do you think it's going to be a place where everybody gets their passing done because there's such a long runway there? Or do we see just the cars ramp up to their top speed and it's kind of just, hey, it'll stand pat and they just go down the strip and it looks beautiful, but there's no real passing in that area?
It could be a bit of a DRS train. There could also be some good passing heading down into the turn coming off of the Las Vegas Strip. And then once you kind of come off that, then there's it's a long blast towards the start-finish line down into turn 1, which we could also get some passing, because it looks like for turn 1 there's probably about 2, maybe 3 different racing lines they could take through there. The pit entry for me is a bit of a concern. It was really tight when I walked it, and it's a bit fiddly. It's kind of reminds me a tiny bit of like Canada and Saudi Arabia as well, a bit, where you kind of got to slow down well in advance of a little bit of a chicane to kind of get into pit lane. So and then the blend line, leaving pit lane and getting back out onto the track. And looking at some of the video from the safety car from last night, there was 2 different lines that those 2 drivers were using, and one of them was coming over onto that blend line. So that'll be interesting when a driver's coming back out onto the track.
Yeah, I better watch out.
But for the most part, for the most part, it seems relatively safe and also really fast. And there are some spots where drivers can get some passing done. It's just that tire graining and grip that I'm concerned about.
Okay.
Not having enough of that on the track.
Yeah.
The other issue that was really brought up was the jet lag. So drivers coming from Europe and then coming over to Vegas in that time change, and then leaving Vegas and going straight to Abu Dhabi for the final race of the season. That actually was a real thing. And like a lot of these drivers are working with doctors, sleep specialists, their trainers to try and get a handle on it. And some of them just can't. Like some of them, like Alex Albon was saying that for him, it's jet lag is really tough for him to battle. There were a few other drivers that had mentioned that as well. But for Lewis Hamilton, like he was like in the press conference just being like, yeah, it doesn't bother me.
He's
like
such a
every
pro.
other driver is every other driver's like, yeah, you know, we're not like all the other drivers are taking like shots back at Lewis. They're all just like, yeah, but, you know, we're not like Lewis. You know, we all just can't power through jet lag. And Sergio, what did Sergio say? He said, paraphrasing, but essentially he's like, yeah, I'm going to have to take some of whatever those pills are that Lewis is taking to help him battle jet lag.
That's so much fun.
Said it right to his face.
Oh my god!
Oh, dude, he said it right to his face. It was great.
Are we ever going to see
it was funny.
F1 go to a regional schedule where it's like we get Canada, Mexico, Austin, Miami, Vegas, Brazil all in the same time frame?
I don't know. That's a great question. I think for this one, I think for this one, it's different in the fact that they're not really catering to anybody, which is kind of it's a bit of a question mark for me because they're not catering to, even though you want your American audience, and that's, you know, big for them now. They really want to try and build up that American audience, but they're not really catering, Jesse, to the Eastern time zone, and they're not catering either to the Pacific time zone because this thing starts at, I think it's like 10 o'clock at night Pacific time. It's like 1 a.m. back in Toronto, and it's, well, who's going to be up watching all that? Right. And then you look at the European time, and that's like whatever it is, like 6 or 7 in the morning. Well, who's going to be up over there? I think the country that probably gets off the best is Australia. Like for them, that's like, it's like their afternoon. It's like, this is great. You're gonna watch Formula One now.
Yeah.
And like here, it's like we're not going to be done till 3:30 in the morning. Like it's, so I don't really know what they're thinking when it came to these time zones.
Right. It just seems like for the driver's sake and for the economics of the sport, you know, would you not want all of the North American races at one point in the calendar and then all the European ones at the same point? And then when you're going over to East Asia, you know, they're at the same time in the calendar, just to save on the environmental costs. And if it is F10, you know, that they're still working towards, and just for the sake of the fan too, you know, it's kind of at the same location. If you want to get to more than one race, you're in the same continent as the other ones, you know. It just seems like, hey, you can do the scheduling a little better, so you get kind of these regional races at the same point in the calendar. Yeah,
that's one of the things that they've been working towards. It's also trying to convince the organizers to switch up their dates, which is really hard to do because, you know, if you know, for the Canadian Grand Prix, I mean, they don't want to be in November. I mean, no one's going to want to go. Same with they want to be in October. They want to be there in like spring, summertime. That is the best time to have the race there. And for Las Vegas, it's kind of like, well, you don't want to be in the summertime here. It's like 110 degrees. You're going to kill these drivers with the heat. And so there are certain challenges that are posed when it comes to creating a calendar. I think what they've done for this year and then into next year, I think they're getting towards that. What you're saying is trying to get like, hey, if you're going to come to America, like just do all of America, then do your Mexico, then do your Brazil, then go back over and do XYZ. And I agree with what you're saying in that front. And I think they are working towards that. It's just, it will take a couple of years before it's like all kind of solidified in that regard and in that sense. But
right.
Yeah, you make a good point with that one, man. Really good point. What was the other point I wanted to talk? Oh man, there's just so much going on here. Jet lag. I think like for the drivers, George Russell, we got to speak with him. He's actually been preparing for the jet lag since last Friday by dropping an hour of his like wake time. So he did that while he was over in Europe and then kind of built into it. So once he gets to Abu Dhabi, that massive time shift won't feel as severe for him. But there are other drivers like Daniel Ricciardo came to LA. When was it? Last Wednesday. So last week. just to prepare for the Pacific time zone. But he even said like he's still waking up early. He's been trying to like battle through the jet lag that he had faced just to come to Los Angeles, and he still can't kind of cope or grasp with it. So I think for some drivers, it's just like you're going to go to Abu Dhabi and you're going to drink a lot of coffee, and then you're going to get that hit of adrenaline of being in the car, and that better be enough to kind of switch things over. But it does affect performance. Like, I mean, Jesse, like, you know, like you go to a different time zone, you're going to run or you're going to work out or whatever. It does affect your body. Like, it's hard to do it, right?
Yeah, and with these guys, it's all about like the 0.5% of advantage you're getting over the next guy, and your sleep is a part of that. You know, your how you're living your everyday life is goes into so much about how you perform on the racetrack. And for these guys, yeah, I bet it's just an everyday struggle with their trainers and the entire staff there to get them into the right mental state of performing. So yeah, it's interesting that we're going to see a bunch of jet lag drivers race around the racetrack. You know, we probably won't ever notice it, but it's cool to know in the back of our minds that they got a little less sleep with these next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and then even for like the team personnel as well, they kind of have to follow that same routine of trying to battle through that jet lag. I just feel that, in my opinion, I think it's a bit too much to stagger these two races back to back like that. I think it's really hard on the teams. I think it's really hard on the individuals who work behind the scenes to make this operation run, because it's not only that they came off a triple header, had, you know, whatever, 5 days off, came to Vegas, you know, had to, you know, work here, build up everything, and then do the job, and then tear it down, and move on to Abu Dhabi. It is a lot. It's a big ask from everyone who works within the sport, for the teams and the drivers. And so I think, you know, when we talk about schedule, I think it's trying to give some of that balance back, so you're not wearing down your personnel who are working behind the scenes so hard to make this machine sort of run. And I think that's a bit of an issue that needs to be addressed for sure. When I kind of look and see and talk to people, it just it is something. It is a thing for sure. Another thing is the
I was just gonna say, that's such a good point, because like we think of the drivers, but there's hundreds of people that go behind all of these teams. You know, there's such a mountain of people and logistics that go into a Formula One team, that it's not just the 20 individuals on the racetrack who are affected by all of this travel schedule. And like, how long is the flight from Vegas to Abu Dhabi? Like, even that, just sitting on that plane and getting all that equipment over there, like, that's crazy. That turnaround.
Like, you're at least, like, for some folk, there isn't a direct flight from here to, like, say, Heathrow. And so for some of them, they fly Vegas to, I don't know, I'm just going to throw out Dallas, or they fly Vegas to Los Angeles, and then they go Los Angeles direct to Heathrow, or Gatwick, I think is the other one. And then from there, maybe spend a day at home, and then repack, and then fly to Abu Dhabi. Some of them do that. Some of them go like directly there. And so that's, oh boy, that's a ton of travel. I don't even know. Maybe 20 hours, maybe more.
Yeah,
like,
those are crazy demands.
It's a lot, you know, it's a bit too much. That's why I think I even listened to some of the drivers when they were talking about the triple header, and some of the team personnel as well, is that when they got to the end of the triple header, so Texas, Mexico, and Brazil, like that was quite a bit. That was quite a bit to do, because not only were they coming from the UK over to Austin, Texas, getting on that time zone, then going to Mexico, getting on that time zone, then Brazil, getting on that time zone, and then going back to the UK. I mean, I did just Texas, Mexico, and for me, it was a lot. I was just, I got home and I was like, oh, like, I didn't really realize just how much that took out of me until I got home. But I think that's one of the things that they should probably start looking into, is just how can they, you make a good point of how can they reconfigure this thing so it's a little more smoother for everyone. you've seen the Sphere, right?
I've been in love with the Sphere. Like, it's been one of my favorite things to watch the last couple of months since it's been launched. It's such a marvel. I'm so jealous that you get to see it in person.
It's when you first land and you see this big friggin' thing and you're like, that's not real. And then the more time you kind of spend around it, you're just like, you're still in awe of it. Yep. Like, I remember you and Adam were talking, and Steve, you guys got into it about the pyramids.
Yeah.
What's more impressive, or the Sphere?
Yeah, no, I think it's one of the greatest wonders that man has ever built. Like, it's such a spectacular building and object, and how is it so big, and all of the LEDs that go into making it light up and then do whatever you want to make it do. Like, when it's an eyeball, like, I lose it when I see those TikToks of it being a giant eyeball and blinking, or when it's the emoji and it's following things around. Like, it's such a spectacular building to me. I don't know. I'm in love with the Sphere.
We went to Topgolf, myself and a bunch of the other journalists, and you could see, like, Topgolf is outrageous to begin with. I'd never been to a Topgolf, or I had been to a Topgolf, but like I never really got into it like I did when we were there a couple days ago. Mm-hmm. And you could, from the top level where we were, you could see the Sphere in the background. And so they had at one point the emoji face come on, where it's like looking at you questionably. And it was looking at one of the producers, like, perfectly while he was taking a tee shot, that I had to record it because it was just friggin' brilliant, man. Like, how this thing lined up with this guy taking a tee shot.
Yeah.
And I think, like, it works in so many different ways. I would like to see a concert from the inside. I didn't get to see the inside of it. Mm-hmm. It looks impressive.
Yeah, to do something at that scale, like all that technology, it's been around for a while to do that LED screens and all that stuff, but to do it at that scale, it seems impossible, but it's done, and of course it's in Vegas. Like, if it's going to be anywhere, it's going to be in Vegas. And I don't know, when I compare it to the pyramids, and I'm like, that's a greater invention of the pyramids, because, like, if you took somebody from like 100 years ago and you plop them down in front of that Sphere, like, that thing is a god. Like, it's a miracle that it exists. It's crazy. I don't know.
Oh my god,
it's pretty cool.
It's $2.3 billion build. Like, that's outrageous, man. Like, and I saw the reports where they had lost money on this thing. Mm-hmm. Like, I think it was like 100 million they've lost so far on it or something. But once this thing gets rolling and they get more concerts in there and events happening, they're going to make that money back pretty quickly. Oh, yeah. Because I've seen it. So I saw it in pictures and stuff, and I remember listening to you guys argue about it, like the pyramids and stuff. And in my mind, I was kind of like, you know what? Adam makes a good point, where it's like how they actually had to build the pyramids, and that's outrageous. And then I was listening to what you were saying, and then now that I actually see it, I'm like, you know what? I think Jesse's onto something here, because this thing is like, I can't believe it's real.
Yeah. I don't know, because my argument about that, if you want to rehash that conversation, was like the if you go back to where the pyramids were invented to now, I'm including the entire, like, technological advancements of humans to reach this point where we could build this Sphere in the desert. Because in Las Vegas, like, as compared to what they had back then in the pyramids, like, I'm counting all of history, and we get to this point where we create this magical thing. Like, I don't know, it's so silly, but it's pretty damn cool that Sphere exists.
So I think, like, F1 has leased a part of it to do a bunch of activation with partners, and then they're going to also run live timing and scoring on the Sphere itself during the race, and they're going to have like different driver and helmet positions on it. So that's going to be really cool to see how they integrate Formula One into the Sphere itself. One of the things for F1 though is that, and the FIA, was how big of a distraction it could be for the drivers. And so they've eliminated the colors blue, yellow, and red from showing up on it.
Oh, wow.
Like just straight colors, because it actually does turn those colors. And so one of the things is the fear is that the drivers will get caught out by seeing like a yellow flag or a red flag, or sorry, a yellow object, red object, blue object, and think it's like a flag or something has happened on the track, and have them stop or slow down or whatever. So they've eliminated those colors. But George Russell, like, he didn't think he would be that distracted, because he knows it's a giant ball. And he was just kind of saying, like, I'm going to see it's a giant ball. He's like, it's massive, so if it turns red, I still know it's a giant ball. It's not a flag.
It's not somebody waving him. That's a good point, George. It's hard to confuse a little red flag with a giant ball in the sky. Maybe they should use it for red flags. They should use it so know when it's a red flag, because the sphere turns red.
Yeah, no, 100%. Actually, that's not a bad idea. I've been thinking about it. You might as well just embrace it.
Yeah,
but I think, like, at the same time, like, make it a part of the thing. Yeah. Sure. I think at the same time, it's smart by, the FIA to take the precautions, and Formula One to take those precautions for sure. Like, I do think it's a great idea. But yeah, you're right. George does have a point when he's like, it's a giant ball. Like, I'm going to see it. I'm like, I'm looking at it when I was on track and everything. I'm like, at like 2 a.m, I'm looking at this thing. I'm like, yeah, you know what? George has got a point. You know what?
How much of the sphere can you see from the whole track? Like, can you see it from every part of the track?
Oh yeah, it's massive, dude.
Oh, yeah.
This thing is just, it is. I think it's so cool. It is awesome. It's totally outrageous. I would actually be flipping my head if my hotel room was facing it, because it would be totally annoying at night when you're trying to sleep, even if you have the windows closed or the curtains closed. So I'm glad I'm not facing that direction. But you have to get down here and see this thing. It's pretty outrageous. We went for a helicopter ride. I was telling you about this before we started recording. Yeah. And that for me was probably one of the highlights, because I was telling you, Jesse, it felt like I was about to fall out of the helicopter, because it's almost like a stunt helicopter, and like the pilot, very experienced, and so he was like zipping us around through the hotel buildings and stuff, and we're so high up, and I'm looking at the sphere, and I'm looking down, and I hate heights, hate them, and I'm like, well, if this is how I'm going to die, like, this is going to happen, because if something happens here, that's it. It's over. So I was like, I might as well embrace this and have a good time. Oh my God. So I did, and it was awesome, man. We landed, and the guy's like, how was that? And then the folks I was with, they were like, yeah, that was good. And I'm like, that was awesome. I'm like, let's go do it again.
For everybody listening, like, if you don't follow Tim on TikTok and Instagram and Twitter, like, you are missing out on some really great content, because you spent how long has it been now? 5 days? 5 days in Vegas?
Than that.
Yeah, more than that.
I've been here for 8. Yeah.
8 days, but you have like access to everything. Like, everything F1, you've been behind the scenes and in front of the camera, behind the camera, and things like the helicopter ride. Like, follow Tim right now. If you're listening to this, go follow him, pause the show, follow him, or listen and follow him, because you're going to get some really cool content, and go back and watch it all. It's been spectacular to watch Tim. You're having the time of your life there.
No, I know. It's been wild, man. The shit I've gotten to do. Like, so we got to see the Bellagio fountains, and so there had been reports like a while back that the Bellagio fountains were drained and the fountains weren't working, but they've actually, the entire sort of lake has been filled the whole time they've been building the grandstands, the hospitality area, which is unbelievable, by the way, just down the strip. And then they are actually, what they're doing, so when whoever wins, Max Verstappen, they're going to get put on a truck and they're going to get sent around to the it's called the winners stage at the Bellagio fountains, and they built this stage for the top 3. They're going to bring them over there. There's going to be this massive fountain show, and the driver's going to be interviewed there, and then they're going to go from there, do the champagne spray and all that stuff, and then bring them in for the media sessions and things of that nature. It's probably going to the closing parts of the race, Jesse, I think are going to take a little while, but I think it's going to be a spectacle because I got to see a preview of the Bellagio fountain display that they were doing. I posted it. Yeah, like you said, I posted it on my social media.
Yeah.
I just think that in itself is so Vegas, and it's like,
right.
Man,
it'll be similar to how Miami, how they had them on the truck and they drove them into the stadium to kind of do the presentation stuff there. So I assume Vegas will be a similar way. We got to wait for them. We got to watch them all drive in there, and then finally we'll get the trophy presentation and all that.
Yeah, and I think that in itself, these these hospitality areas that they built, kind of overlooking that Bellagio sort of fountain winners stage. I got a tour of those, and I will post that video later. But it's like you're going. It's so lavish in the luxury of it. It's like you're going into a wedding. Like that's how elegant it is inside these VIP hospitality areas. It's about, I want to say for the 3 days, Jesse, it's about 12,000 USD for the entire thing for one ticket.
For one ticket? The ticket, I assume, comes, you get to stay there, right? Because the hospital, like, you don't need a hotel and all. That includes like your food and hotel and everything.
I believe it's just for the race. It's not for the hotels. It's just for I believe that's what it's for. Yeah.
No. Okay, then never mind. That's a lot. That's quite a bit. Oh my goodness.
It is. It definitely is. I think like it's probably it's the tickets here are definitely expensive. They've released, so they held tickets back and then they released them to the public. I think it was about 2 weeks ago, and those are at a reduced cost, which is, I'm glad that they did that. And I think next year the prices are going to be reduced as well, because at the end of the day, I think, Formula One can't price itself out of markets. And I think you need to make sure that your racing fans, your F1 fans, they need to be a part of this as well. It's very important. I think like off track. So there's a hotel chain here. It's at Resorts World, and it's I believe it's called Conrad's. And I've never heard of, people may be yelling at me right now, Jesse, but I've never actually heard of Conrad hotels before. Never.
I haven't either.
But I got a tour of it. I got a tour of this place, man. And oh my God, dude, it is so nice.
Oh yeah.
Oh man, it's a very nice hotel. But what I'm getting at is essentially the high net worth folks. That's where probably a lot of them are going to be staying. They have their own private entrance to get into the place. They have their own valet service, and then they've got like the high rollers room, like where they can go to gamble and all that stuff. And all of their like high end tables is. I don't know what the buy-in is for it. It's a lot, but all of their tables are reserved for the F1 weekend. So I think when we read reports that, this race could bring in potentially over $1 billion of revenue for the community, when I look at some of the things, I'm like, they could get close to that. I mean, that's how much money could probably come into this thing. It's pretty wild, man.
Yeah. And there was Lewis's comments before the weekend started earlier in the week, where he was talking about how you need to be cognizant of the locals. You got to take care. You got to make sure you're not taking over Vegas itself, and that you're not disrespecting the people who are from Vegas and are there all the time. And I think having the influx of people is going to be great for the economy, and hopefully, like, that takeaway where you're like, hey, this was a spectacular event for Vegas and it grew the economy in a weekend where we had $1 billion come in. Like, hopefully that appeases the people there, where it's like, okay, this was all worth it in the end because of the spectacular event that was put on. The fans are happy and the people who came in are happy, and it did do wonders for the money influx for Vegas.
Yeah, no, you make a really great point. I think, and so did Lewis. He actually had a bunch of kids come into the pit building area to meet him and seeing in around Mercedes, and Mercedes put this thing together with Lewis, and it was a lot of kids from a lot of local underprivileged sort of schools that are within the outer area of this entire place. And it was really cool. I mean, these kids just came out and they're freaking out. They're having such a good time. They're so excited to see Lewis. And he makes a good point where it's kind of like, you're bringing in a lot of money into this community. And it's kind of like, he was kind of driving at the fact that, like, he hopes that these places that they go to, they leave more than what they kind of take away from it. And I think, I think F1, and I've said this before a long time ago, and I think like F1 has that platform and that power to actually, do that. And I hope that they do, for sure. Yeah. I hope that they do. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Jesse, when are you coming to Vegas?
I don't know. I got to go back. When I mentioned before, I went during the pandemic. That was the only time I was there. And I feel like my first time in Vegas, I didn't really see Vegas because it was like half the amount of people that should have been there. It was a pandemic that was happening, and you had to still wear masks in a lot of different places. And I want to see Vegas when it's full, and everybody's out there. So I don't know. I got to get back within the next year or so. Maybe next year's Grand Prix, if I can do just like the weekend, like the Saturday and the Saturday night, like that would be fun 2-day trip for Vegas. Maybe I'll join you out there next year.
Man, you should come here for the Super Bowl.
Oh, in February, yeah.
Yeah.
That's not a bad idea at all. I got a tour.
Yeah. I got a tour of the Allegiant Stadium, and it's the amount of work that they've done there. That stadium alone, oh man, it's super nice. Like, yeah. If I don't know what the tickets are like for Super Bowl. Like, I have no grasp of that, but I think this place would be pretty fun for a couple days during the Super Bowl.
I assume if I'm there for Super Bowl weekend, it would be to watch the game, not at the stadium, because I don't think there's a chance I can get my hands on Super Bowl tickets, but I could go to Vegas and watch it at some place in Vegas.
Yeah, you go to one of the sports books. So oh my God, before we end this, I got to tell this story, Jesse. Oh my God. So the Bills game on Monday.
Yeah, crazy.
Did you watch it?
Crazy game. Like the too many men on the field call at the end. Oh my gosh.
Oh my God. So I don't know if folks who are listening, if they've never been to a sports book, I'm sure there are some that have. Jesse, can you best explain what a sports book is to folks that may never been to one?
Yeah, sure. So a sports book is where you can go and they have like, I guess best way to describe it is a bunch of like cashiers where you can place bets and you can bet on all sporting events around the world. And it's mainly football. They'll have it. These sports books are like big college football games or NCAA games. But you go to the sports book. On all these screens and monitors, they do it up really nice. You'll see all of the odds for the current games, and you can go everywhere around. You can place bets, and you can watch all the games as well. They do it really nice where you have big lounge chairs, and you can watch the game on 1 million TVs, and every game that's on right now that you could ever think of is on all the screens, and you can be there, and you can place bets while you're there.
Okay, so I've been to a sports book before, but it was a long time ago. I want to say 2009 or 2010, in around then. And it was really nice. And I stayed and I watched some NFL. And then I went back on Sunday, and my first time back in years, like over a decade. And it was packed, and there was nice chairs. You could sit down. It was like they're like lazy boys and whatever. And I'm like, wow, this is pretty cool. And like people were getting into the games, and because they were betting on them so much. And it was such a wild atmosphere.
Yeah.
Because there was so much emotion involved in the games, Jesse. Like, so Monday, I'm like, you know what? I go down, placed a bet on the Bills game. And I'm like, yeah, I'll see what happens. I've never done this before and have some fun. And then met up with a couple of the other reporters, and we were having like dinner, and we were watching the game at one of these big places, and the TVs are huge, right? Yeah. They're massive. And so when that too many men flag came out, I have never seen so many like grown men scream, yell, drop to their knees.
Oh my gosh.
It was pretty wild, man. And I was just like, even like myself, because I had placed a bet on a sporting event, and I don't really bet. It was kind of one of my first sort of bets. Even internally, I was like, what the hell? But then I wasn't feeling it as much as everybody else was feeling it.
I think like, cause there's real money on the line there. Like that's where the emotion in the sports book, like everything is it's so at this extra level, because the majority of people have actual finances on the line, and you never know, like the guys who are the most upset, how much they actually have on the line. You know, like that's where it's like the most charged up is those individuals. And for a game to end on where you think the one team won, and then for that to be taken back, the emotion, like what a place to be for you to witness that.
Man, it was something. I think it was definitely something to see. I'd never seen anything like it before, so it was an experience. I'll say that. This whole thing has been quite the experience, Jesse. And I mean, there's more to come, obviously, and we're gonna have more on this podcast at the end of the Vegas Grand Prix. Jesse, I just want to thank you for taking the time to do this. Really, really appreciate it, man. Are you guys still doing SDP now that Steve's over in Sweden?
So we have an episode coming Saturday morning. We're going to be recording really early Saturday morning, so it's like afternoon in Sweden time, and that'll be the only one we'll do this week of Steve in Sweden on the SDP. I don't know how it's going to go, but it'll be fun.
Well, Jesse, thanks very much for taking the time, man, to do this. I really appreciate it. If you want more Nailing the Apex, you can get it wherever you get your podcasts. Please head on over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, write a review, give us a follow, let us know how you're doing. And also, you can watch past episodes on YouTube as well. We'll be back at the end of the Vegas Grand Prix.